Andrew and Kai as representatives, huh?
Yes.
The A team, you're sicking the A team on us.
I think Mike and Art are supposed to be committed. Have they logged in yet? No. Good afternoon, Art. Well, I guess if Mike joins us, we can let him in, but we probably should get started. Our chairperson quit, so we would probably need to identify another chairperson before we proceed, or at least one temporary for this meeting. Any volunteers?
I moved to nominate Andrew Castine because he was the first person to sign on.
Would you mind chairing the meeting for today, Andrew? We could do a permanent one for next time, but
Yeah, I can. I didn't have anything set up. I mean, this is my first time to the table. So is this like just an open forum of discussion basically? And I just give everybody an opportunity to speak and just try to keep people's responses to them, a certain time period.
well,
I definitely don't want to be the chair moving forward after this though.
okay. Well, the one big thing that we have to do with this committee is have a recommendation for the fees.
Okay.
For the, actually, there's two portions of it. There's the registration portion of it, and there's also the inspection part of it. And, Joe will be able to clear that up. I'm not fully informed on it, and we don't have to. We have minutes from last meeting, but Mike's is the secretary, so he's not here, so you don't have to do that. So I guess we could get right to the problem at hand if you'd like.
You sound like you should be the one running this, to be honest. It's my first time here. I think you guys have all gotten together before.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if I should be the one doing it, but you want to do it?
Well,
Or Mr. de Grand Prix? Or Mr. Moore? Anyone but me?
we can't hear you. Art. You're muted.
I don't think there was ever a second second to that motion, so maybe we can just make a new motion to nominate someone else.
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to be a permanent one either, but I could do that today.
All right. I motion for Mr. Moore to serve as chair today. Can I have a second from the floor?
I
All right, we have
that.
a second. Okay, we have a second. Do we have any discussion? No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing
Okay,
none, seeing none, moving forward.
Okay, well, I'll do the deed for today. Maybe we could start with, well, we should do a roll call. Yeah, Mike's the secretary. You'd be the one recording everyone here. Let me just jot down quick who's here. Okay, well, Lemire has tasked us with doing a recommendation. Obviously, this will have to come to the full council and they will, vote on the final form of it, but this is to give a recommendation, which I hope would carry some weight with the council. So, Joe, could you start it off by explaining where we're at right now?
Sure. Well, first, let me preface this by saying that I was tasked by the prior administration for making this budget neutral. Okay, so we knew with this law we were going to need additional manpower to execute it, and so we said we try it with one new person and moving the existing staff to 40 hours. We got that cost from Rich, and then we worked the fee backwards to cover that cost. And that's essentially the nuts and bolts of how we came up with $100 a rental unit for a 3-year registration permit. So that's really what I've got on that. I mean, I have, I can show you the worksheets that we used. I mean, I don't know if I have that in a form that's presentable right now, but essentially what we got is from Rich, with FICA and labor costs and all that, an additional person plus 35 plus another 40 hours for all the staff, put the number to $124,000, and charging $100 per rental unit covers that with a little bit extra, I don't know, 5,000 extra a year or something like that. That could be used for equipment, vehicles, that kind of thing. So that's how we came up with that, and it wasn't with any other outside input. So, whatever you guys have to say about it, be happy to listen. But that's how we came up with that number. And by the way, that number is fairly consistent with several other municipalities that we drew bits and pieces of this law from. Other college communities that had of a similar size, had similar college: Oswego, Cortland, Syracuse, Rochester, Geneseo, Brockport, Buffalo, Fredonia. We looked at all of theirs, and this fee is in line with all of that. It might be a little more than some, a little less than others.
Well, can I kick the questioning off by how are you proposing that people would pay for that, Joe? Is this something that would be one payment for 3 years, or could this be
Okay, so yeah, I mean, that's
carried over year to year?
Honestly, I've never implemented a new fee structure. I've been a part of increasing existing fees that we've already had, using that rationale, that kind of stuff. So I don't think we've got that sorted out yet. That's something I think we needed to work with Dean on, and figure that end out. We've got some ideas about paying up front, for the 3-year permit, or maybe deferring some costs. Maybe you pay annually and it's maybe a little more than if you paid all of it up front. I don't know that it matters to me. Whatever makes the most sense for everybody else.
Andrew and Kai, I'd sure like to hear from the landlord side of this.
No, that's kind of what, can you guys hear me, by the way? Yes. Okay.
Yep.
When we had talked initially, is basically all we were asking for is that the fees be basically used just for this, working backwards, as Joe suggested, not, a general tax on rental properties, which increases our tax. And if it's passed on to the tenants, it increases to the tenants and so forth. So we were just asking for an idea of what the costs would be basically for the building inspector's office, and then working backwards. So, Joe, about how many rental units are in the city right now?
I'm going to say it's a plus or minus, but we factor it in as about 4,300, somewhere in that are swept up in this ordinance. It doesn't include 1 and 2 family homes, so there's some other units that might not be accounted for. But the number of units that we figure fall into this program are in the neighborhood of 4,300.
Andrew, would you like to weigh in on that?
So just to make sure, before Andrew weighs in on, just to make sure we're all of the understanding of, how we were looking at this, that $100 rental permit is for a 3-year permit, the $100 fee. It's not $100 a year, it's $100 for the permit for the 3-year permit, which translates to $33 a year, or about $2.78 a month. Just to make sure we're all on the same page about that.
So what about the, so now also, I think included in that law was also registration. Is there going to be an annual registration required too, Joe, or is that included in the inspection? Is there going to be?
You mean registration fee or additional legwork?
Either way, is there going to be, how are you guys proposing? Is there going to be, because I know a part of that law was that they wanted, pertinent information per landlord, a local contact, a registration. So is that like an additional permit or paperwork or fee, or what was your idea for that part of it?
Okay, so the rental permit is good for 3 years. It should be updated annually. If there's any change, you can have us inspect annually, but you can self-inspect. So I think there does have to be some component of an annual update.
I think what I was getting at,
as simple as a document stating that you've self-evaluated and you're testifying that there's no violations. At least every 3rd year we need to do the inspection.
I think what Kai was getting at, Joe, is that all inclusive, or was there a separate fee for registration, or?
No. Okay, so yeah, there's no separate fee for that. So the registration for the 3-year permit is a $100 fee. Built into that is some inspections, some follow-ups, that kind of stuff. If somebody stands us up without prior notice, there might be a fee in a charge for that, the annual thing that Kai was just talking about doesn't come with additional fees. No.
That's a good thing.
Joe, I'm sorry, you might have already mentioned this, but I just want to clarify. This fee is per unit, not per building or per owner, correct?
Per unit, yes.
So now, Joe, you guys, it seems generous of you guys not to charge a follow-up. I mean, it's obviously more time for you guys to have to, if you've got to follow up and, for a violation. Not that, I'd want to pay that, but it seems, is that?
If you're suggesting that we charge for every follow-up, then I'm not opposed to that. But no,
no, that's a good, I don't want to say a selling point, but that's I think a good thing. If somebody doesn't have to pay for a follow-up, where is it? I would have expected to have to pay for that, to be honest with you.
Okay. Well, I'm not opposed to exploring that. I felt like that was within everybody's best interest to do one follow-up without charge.
Sure.
Kai and Andrew, if I could ask you guys, I just want to clarify from a tenant perspective, as Joe mentioned, the fee of $100 per 3 years averages out to about $2.78 per month. Are you guys expecting this to impact rental costs for tenants in any way?
I can't see myself. I usually don't raise rents until somebody moves out. And then when I advertise a unit, if I want to increase the rent, I generally try not to do that. It is a nominal fee. I know that certain people, other landlords might feel differently. Myself, I mean, it's just one of those things where I just pay for it. Like, I mean, it's not a huge expense. It is writing a check for, maybe $1,000 would be a big expense, a wall at one time. But I guess I mean, if you break it down, like Joe was saying, it's a nominal fee per month. I'm assuming different landlords are going to feel differently about that. Myself, I mean, I think it's just one of those things I'll just end up paying for, basically.
I know it is a large upfront cost for you guys because you do have to front that fee for the 3 years in the beginning. Maybe Councilors Moore and Kelly, and maybe Mr. McMahon, if you could answer as well. Is there a way, at least for the initial onset of the registry, to maybe waive the fee in the beginning for people that are registering, if they register within 30 days, for example, and then as they re-register every 3 years, then they'll start being charged, but that gives them time to, I don't know, offset that upfront cost, while also encouraging them to register in a timely manner.
I mean,
I personally, I'd be against that. I would be in favor of if they pay up front, maybe to reduce that by $10. I think that would be a good compromise. Then in other words, they pay for the 3 years. You can make it 90 instead of 100.
Yeah, my question is, because I know there's been discussion about self inspecting and self-registering, or reducing the amount, maybe if people do register quicker or whatever. But if we reduce certain fees, that's going to short that total amount of money that the city is going to need for that position, right? So say everybody registered and inspected immediately, and self-inspected and reduce the workload. That doesn't mean that you're not going to still need that gross amount of money, right? It's still, no matter what, you're going to need the $124,000, right? I mean, say like we reduce the workload for you, say property owners reduce the workload. Would you then just look at the position and say, well, if they're going to do all this work, then we don't need a full-time employee, and then we only need a part-time employee? Or is it just going to be, you need a full-time employee, and that's the number that you need anyways, 124,000?
Okay, so that's a fair question. And the answer to that is the revision of this law was basically anticipated that reduction in our work by including the ability for self-evaluation. Okay, so there are previous versions of this law that required our inspecting every 2 years, and it got to be a manpower issue. So this 3-year permit, which includes self-inspection certification by the owner, allowed us to be able to only do it with one other person and our existing staff to 40 hours. So that's basically the lightest way we could do it. And so it already factored that in, Andrew, to try and answer your question on that. It's still the documentation for all of the, we're still going to have to put eyes on, there are 4,300 units. It's about 700 properties or buildings that include that. That's still 700 documents that we're going to have to take in, verify, eyes on, keep track of, even if there's self-certification, even if we're not out there doing the inspection ourselves for that unit that year. It's still a heavy lift.
Right. So I have a 2-part question for that. So what are you assuming that by going this is your bare bones is what you're thinking? So are you is there a ratio of a number of landlords you're hoping are going to self-register and self-inspect, or are you thinking that's 100% of people, or is that like 50-50? And then also I was wondering, is the city going to have some sort of like online type of portal, like with the billing, like bill paying with the electric, water and sewer, is that, are we able to upload that information electronically right to a website, or is this all going to be papers submitted to you where you're going to have to, upload all of these documents?
Okay. So part one to that question, I don't have an answer for that. Could be 100%, could be 50%. I would guess that the majority are going to try and self-certify on the off years that we don't have to do it, but could be everybody wants us to inspect every year. In that case, we'll have to, in a year or two, have to reevaluate. I mentioned other communities. Most of these other ones that we looked at were established in 2008, 2010, or whatever. And listen, in 5 years from now, this thing's going to be running just fine. It's just getting it off the ground is a little tricky. So working out those details is something that is just going to be something we have to work through the first couple of years.
Joe, I'm sorry. I'm actually a little confused by the whole self-inspection versus what is required inspection thing. Can you describe that a little? It sounds like your office still has to do an inspection every 3 years minimum, and the registration is going to be a 3-year registration. So do they have to report a self-inspection every year anyway, and they just don't pay in those 2 years in between the registration renewals? How does that work? I'm a little confused by that.
It's a self-inspection certification. They're certifying that they inspected, tested the smoke detectors, checked all the boxes, that they looked at everything and everything is A-okay. So that's in the off years. Like you said, at least every 3 years we have to do the inspection.
So
anyway.
then, Joe, are we as landlords, so I have to inspect each one of my units every year then, and then provide that documentation to you guys in the off years?
Yes.
That could be an issue with some. I have some tenants who really, I don't mind going in, but they don't let me in. That's going to be I can probably get you in every 3 years, but I've got some tenants, boy, who are very, very particular, and I haven't been in their apartments. They won't let me in since they moved in. I could write them a threatening letter, but I try to respect their privacy. So that might raise some concerns. I can think of a couple right off the top of my head.
Fair enough. I mean, that may be one of the details we need to work through.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of those 4,300 units are not going to let the owners self-certify? I don't know the answer to that right now.
I'm not familiar enough with it, but I believe somewhere in New York State laws regarding that, you guys are allowed to enter if, with notice if there's some just cause, but I can't recall off the top of my head what those causes are. Do you think this is something that would fall under that category, or because it's, I don't know, perhaps because it is required by the municipality, would that allow you guys to enter? I mean, I know you'd still have to provide 24 to 48 hours notice, whatever that figure is.
I know a handful of tenants who literally, like, they're just very, very, they don't want me in their apartments. So, yeah. So could I force my way in with a letter? Possibly. But, anyway, I can just see that might be an issue with a couple tenants I have. I mean, I can try to work.
That's just going to be something I think we're going to have to feel out if it turns out, a huge number of units. If it turns out that there's only 20 or 30 instances of that, and we're able to get in there on that third year ourselves,
yep,
something that we might be able to live with. But I think there's a lot of questions that are going to come up, and we're not really going to know the answer until we've made our way through it after 3 years. Have a better grasp on what to expect.
I think 95% of my tenants would be totally fine, as long as I give them, a week or two heads up. I was just throwing it out there for the other tenants. So,
and maybe in some of those instances, if you've self-checked everything and you have 1 or 2 units and maybe they're willing to let us go in there, and maybe
Okay.
they understand it to be more significant if we're the ones that come in there or whatever the case may be. We can certainly probably do that.
Follow-up question then. Obviously with the pandemic still going on, I have a lot of tenants who are nervous about having people in the units as well right now. So when were you guys planning on starting these inspections?
I don't have a drop dead date on that. I know that the law requires this to get underway in April. And, there's a window for these registrations to be accepted. So as soon as we can make it safe for everybody.
Hey, Joe, I have a question for you. In your research of other cities in New York and what they're doing, are they doing 3-year inspections, or are they re-inspecting every year like we're planning to do?
Most of them are 3-year inspections. That's what the state requires anyway. So it coincides with the state requirement.
Is there I'm sorry, I don't know. I haven't looked at it in a long time, but is our local law requiring this annual re-inspection?
I think that's what we were just talking about, was maybe the,
Right, I just want to know
Yeah.
if the local law actually says that we must do that.
I'm not sure I understand the question. You mean the annual inspection or?
Well, there's a 3-year registration.
Yep.
We all know about that, and we've discussed about how to do the fees for that. But is it a requirement to have the annual re-inspection? Is that something that's optional, or does the local law say we must do it every year?
It's optional in a sense that the owners can have us do it, or they can do it themselves in those off years.
Okay, but the re-inspection is required every year. Is that correct?
Yes, by either us or the owners or
Okay.
their agent. Somebody needs to certify, testify that they've had eyes on it and it's not in violation.
Okay, but other cities you've looked at aren't doing that, correct? They're doing every 3 years.
Yes, every 3 years. The
I just wondered.
self-certification though is not something that we invented. So, I think Dean, somebody brought that to our attention that was a possibility to insert into this law. So other places do that as well.
Yeah, self-certification, I'm okay with that. But I just wonder, is it really necessary to do this re-inspection every year?
Yes.
You mean by even the owners to go look at it themselves and say,
Yeah.
hey, all the smoke detectors are working and
Yeah.
there's.
Is
Is
that
it-
necessary?
I can tell you this, in the college area where we live, if an inspection, the turnover is incredible. I see kids jump from house to house. Semester to semester, they do that. So I think it's imperative that there's some kind of an inspection done. It's done by the owner or the owner's designee for these
Every-
out-of-town owners.
Okay,
Perhaps
I think I'd agree with that.
okay.
I think maybe perhaps you could modify it to every 3 years or upon change of tenancy. Would that be something that could work?
Joe,
Is that
are,
a question for me? The change of tenancy is tricky as well because it's hard to get a handle on that. And also there are times when there's a really high volume of a turnover of tenancy. So that would be really hard for this office to keep track of all the college students leaving in May, and how many units that impacted, as an example.
now, Joe, would you guys be providing a list or like a checklist then for those annual self-inspections for landlords?
Yes.
Joe, you have any idea what the percentage of college rentals is in comparing it to the whole 4,300?
Actually, Art, I'm sorry, that's not a number that I've pulled out of this, so I actually don't know that. I'm sure that's something we could get a pretty good approximate on.
You know, there was some talk earlier in this meeting. It almost sounded like it was voluntary to join this registry, but it's not. Everybody has to register. Every landowner or property owner, I should say, has to register. Is that correct?
Yes, everybody everybody that fits the category in the law, which is 3 family and above.
Yeah.
And Joe, will that apply to, so that's, I mean, that's obviously going to exclude single family dwellings and duplexes. How many single family homes do you think are going to meet the criteria of having 5 unrelated individuals who do not dine together, or whatever that is, that however that's defined within the law? Do you think that's going to be many, that's going to add more than what you currently have mandated for 3+ units or buildings?
I don't think that's a real high number. I mean, I don't know where you were going with that. What you think that is? You mean acting as a functional family? Is that what you're talking about?
Right. So, I mean, in a lot of these converted older homes in certain parts of the city, you know, down South Catherine or in the center city, there might be only up to 4 bedrooms and only 4 college students living in those. And those houses are not going to be part of this registry. That's correct.
Unless they're more than 4, what you're saying,
Right.
right? Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So as an example, I know of a duplex on South Catherine Street that's a pre-existing 5 occupants in each unit. That's not permitted by today's standards, but it's pre-existing and it's allowed to continue because of the zoning laws. That's a duplex that wouldn't normally be in this program, but because it's got more than 4, it's going to be. That's your example. If it was only 4, it wouldn't.
Do you think there's going to be a large number of these units that didn't qualify before and now will qualify because they have 5 or more unrelated individuals in them?
I don't think that's a huge number, but I'm not entirely certain about some of this stuff. So I'm sorry, just continuing down that line of questioning. It's without an estimate, it's hard to say, but it sounds like you guys already do inspections on a 3-year basis, and that's other than when a landlord is requesting that you guys come and do the reinspection during those off years. It sounds like you guys are going to stick to that 3-year schedule for the most part, and you're not adding many more units to what is already on your slate for inspections. Is that right? It's not going to dramatically increase the amount of inspections you have to do if most landlords choose to self-certify. Okay. Maybe that's mostly true. One thing we're forgetting is that we get a lot of requested inspection because if you want to have your name on the college list for advertising your property for rent to college students through the college, they require you to be inspected annually by this office. So there's a large number of units that aren't required to be inspected by the state because they don't qualify for one reason or another as needing to, but they still want to be inspected by us annually so that they can be on that list. So we get a large number, 80 or 100 requests a year for that, and lots of those wouldn't be on this list. but those would be requested inspections, and you know, those we're working on a fee for those as well.
What's going to happen if landlords refuse to register their properties?
I think there's a built-in fine for that. I mean, I actually don't have the law in front of me right now because I thought we were just, you know, talking numbers and stuff. So I apologize if I don't have all the details, but it's a requirement, and that's going to be, you know, there's going to be a legal ramification for that.
Is there anything that will help tenants to know that their landlord is registered? Is there anything that, you know, the landlord, some sort of certificate that the landlord will be required or able to provide to a tenant saying, I am on this registry and here's my last inspection date?
Yeah, I anticipate that. I mean, we're working on it, and you know, all the details about this, and you know, certainly that information will be kept in this office, that be you know, for reference, probably be on the city website. But yeah, we're looking at certificates that the owners could provide to the occupants, be posted in the unit.
Is there anything, I'm sorry, I haven't read the law since it was revised, or did, but not recently at least. Is there anything in it that requires the property owners to obtain this certificate or this registration prior to advertising their units for occupancy? Anything that prohibits them from advertising on social media or a sign in their window or in their yard or anything like that? Is there anything that prevents them from being able to advertise their units?
You know, I don't know if that's been clearly spelled out in this law, but I'm not sure that advertising is a problem anyway. I mean, it's occupying. So if they're unlawfully occupied, then that's an issue we can deal with.
I just want to say that it seems like the mayor is pretty intent on us resolving this issue, and you know, we were meeting before and discussing a lot of things, and it seems like his interest in our primary intent should be resolving the fee schedule, and we've hardly talked about that at all so far tonight.
Yeah, well,
So
hopefully at some point we'll be able to make a motion to recommend either Joe's proposal or whatever to bring back to the council.
I just trying to spark conversation to see if anybody has any ideas or any better ideas or anything that we might not be thinking about. I know that we had talked this morning in our office about something that I forgot, maybe Art mentioned it earlier. We talked about, you know, potentially, you know, like when you pay your car insurance in a lump sum, you save a discount. So for certain people, you know, maybe they have so many units and it's going to be a lot more of an upfront cost. Maybe they could pay a small percentage more, but pay it over the 3 years as opposed to upfront. So we've talked about $100 a month or $100 a year. Maybe it'd be $90 a year if they paid it all up front, or maybe I've got it backwards. Maybe it should be $100 a year, or maybe it's a little bit higher if you've paid it over 3 years.
Well, no, it's $33 a year, $100 for
Yeah.
3 years.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I meant,
I think what we kicked around in our office today was, you know, you paid up, you know, an idea of if you paid up front, you know, the $100. If you paid annually, instead of being 33, it'd be 40, something like that. You know, just as a way of having an idea for an alternative.
Any ideas?
So, I mean, you guys, it sounds like you guys have already looked at what other communities do and you guys understand what the administrative burden is going to be for your office. So I think your recommendations are probably the most sound and better than anything I'm certainly that I would be able to offer. I don't know about the others here. The reason I ask about the other questions about what the registry does is just to try to understand if there's any other administrative burdens to your office that I'm not considering if you guys do have to police, you know, whether or not something has been advertised inappropriately, or just trying to understand what goes into the workload for you. If it's really going to come down to just accepting the registry applications and doing the inspections on either every 3 years or perhaps every year if somebody does not self-certified, then I think you guys are best equipped to understand what your fee schedule should be. I did look. Oh.
Listen, I'll be completely honest with all of you and tell you, I don't know exactly how hard this is going to be. What I can tell you is when this subject came up, Peter Ensel was the one who sponsored this several years ago, and we worked on it from there. The issue came up and the idea was put to me, and I said, this is the absolute minimum I would need to try and get this, you know, off the ground and maintain it. But I'll tell you, and some of you know this already, that, you know, in 2006, John Clute, our city attorney at the time, did a very intensive assessment of something like this. They were looking at doing a rental registration at that time, and that included a 2-year cycle for inspections. But he compiled all this data, you know, worked with our city building inspector at the time, who was Rick Perry, and other communities, that kind of stuff. He put together a detailed information that stated that based on the number of man hours to do this, it would take 3.5 new inspectors in this office to get this program off the ground and maintain it. So we tried to figure out a way that was, you know, less impactful as far as manpower goes, but this, you know, this is the bare minimum of what we need to do this. So I said we'd try and give it our best effort, and you know, hopefully what we have in place will work, and if not, we'll figure out how to make it work.
Well, as a city councilor, I can tell you my big hope with all this is that the rental registry program would pay for itself. That was really my only concern, was that you know, the general public, taxpayers, and I know landlords include taxpayers, but that the taxpayers wouldn't have to bear the burden for this, that it would come directly from the property owners who are renting their properties. And it sounds as though, in listening to Kai and Andrew, that they're okay with that concept too. So you know, if we can do this for $124,000 a year, I think that's what you said, Joe, $124,000 a year, I would be perfectly okay with that. So it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but it sounds like $100 a year then is a appropriate amount to charge at this point. I'm sorry, $100 per 3 years is an appropriate amount to charge for this. And, you know, speaking as one city councilor, I would be in favor of that. You know, it could be that we discover, wow, it's going to cost us way more than this, or it's going to cost way less than this, and we can adjust that easily. But that's a good place to start, I believe. Sort of like you say, Joe, this whole thing is an experiment for us. We've never done it before. So we want to make sure we do it right.
Yeah, and I absolutely believe in 5 years this will be seamless. But right now it's, you know, it's going to be tricky to get it off the ground, and you know, there's going to be you know, some roadblocks and some things we didn't anticipate. That happens with everything like that. And, you know, we'll have to tweak it.
Maybe, I also like the idea of giving an upfront discount. You know, if you pay it all for 3 years in one lump sum, then we'll knock $10 off per unit. And that seems fair. That's what other companies do. I believe.
I
we
think you're
can-
gonna be a little short if you reduce it to 90. I like the idea of maybe charging $35 or $40 a unit. And then if it's paid up front, it's 100. What do you think about that?
Well, just
Yeah.
doing the math, Art, if Joe's looking for 124,000 divided by 48 or 4,300, that's about $29 per unit, actually. So I think 40 is definitely pushing the envelope.
Let me just make sure we're all on the same page about that. I'm not 100% sure that number 4,300, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. So that's pretty close to where we're at, and it's a number I'm comfortable using here, but you know, we may find out it's a little less than that.
So Joe, the total number of rental units in the city of Plattsburgh is about 4,900 as of the 2018 ACS data. So that's including all single family duplexes and multifamily. I can't find anything that breaks out multifamily versus single versus duplex, but if that number is 4,900 for all rental housing, I'm worried that 43 number might be too high.
And I mean, I can't testify to that at this point. I mean, you know, we work with the county and, you know, tried to pull that data as best we could. That's all I can tell you right now. We've done our best to pull those properties that with the information that we could, and you know, that's where we're at.
I think that our baseline needs to be that figure that we're at, obviously, to facilitate, you know, what we've already, you know, we've got another inspector coming on and everything that, you know, obviously we already hashed that all out. So I think the figure should remain $100. And if someone needs to pay it over the 3 years, then tack on 15% or something. So it'd be 115 total, something 110, whatever. I mean,
So you're going the other way then, rather than what the councilors are suggesting, a discount. You're saying a surplus.
well,
If you pay it.
we haven't actually locked in a figure yet. So
Well,
I
say
mean,
the $100.
no, we could lower that to maybe $98 or some odd number, and
Or, I mean, we
I
could
don't
look
know.
at it backwards. Sorry, Jim.
it's just hard to say how many people would take advantage of paying over 3 years. I'm sure, you know, most people would want to pay up front and pay the least that they have to pay. So if that figure is lower than what we've already ballparked, there could be a shortfall.
Yeah,
Which-
I don't think we should get too hung up with, you know, small numbers. We're not gonna know the actual numbers until we, you know, start the registry. So, you know, I wouldn't want to get too big of a discussion about exactly how many there are. We will know after we start doing this, and we can adjust appropriately. So I don't know if we want to spend too much time, you know, trying to figure out exactly how many there are. I'm guessing we use the census numbers and kind of extrapolate something, but that's not an exact number. And if it comes up a little short or whatever, you know, we can deal with that. It's not critical.
And just to let you know, in 2006, when this report I'm talking about from John Kloop, they showed 4,000 rental units in 2006.
and that includes all rentals, single family, duplex, and
No,
multifamily.
that included the rental units that fell into this program. So that's, you know, I don't know the exact number. Some of them slipped through the cracks. That's one of the main reasons for this program.
Yeah, my main point being that we don't really need to go that deep into it at this point. You know, that we capture most of what we need to start the program. We will know after everything is registered how many exactly there are. But let's not get too deep into the weeds on something that we will not be able to figure out. It's probably pretty close, Joe. It's in the ballpark.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with saying it's in the ballpark, for sure.
Well, I guess I'm comfortable with that moving forward. How do we proceed with that then? What's our
Okay,
next
well,
steps?
We could entertain a motion for someone to recommend that we go with Joe's numbers, what, $100 for 3 years?
Well, I would like to maybe carry it over to another meeting. I just want to talk to my other landlord people. I mean, I say I'm personally, I don't want to speak for every single landlord in town. To me, the metrics of the way it came up with seem logical, but you know, I think differently than a lot of other people. So maybe we could reflect on it for another week and then reconvene and go from there. But it sounds like we have a good starting point, right?
I believe so.
Great.
There is some time concerns on this, so would everybody be willing to meet again next week at the same time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Okay, and we can all get more information if we need more, and I could speak with some of the other counselors and see what they think about the idea of having a discount for paying up front or whatever. I mean, that was one question that came up. So we have some things to talk about. If everybody's willing, then and you feel you need to talk with some of the others, and I hear you. How does I guess everyone else feels the same way, and we can meet next week.
Sounds like a good plan to me.
Okay.
As long as Andrew gets us the meeting minutes ahead of time so that we can review them, make sure they're all accurate.
Well, it could be. It's all on live stream, so anyone.
All I have to say about that is I will do that and I'll create the agenda. But one thing that I always hold fast to is any new business needs to be brought to me beforehand and put on the agenda. So we can't, if you want me to do that, I need to know before the meeting starts. Otherwise you can't speak later.
Fair enough. Well, I guess at this point we could make a motion to meet next week at the same time. So
I motion to meet next
Actually, I'm
week at the
sorry.
same time. Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just want to ask, do we expect next week's to be the final meeting? If not, I would suggest we set all remaining meetings at this point.
this should take care of the recommendation on the fees,
Okay.
which
This
is,
committee is going to be dissolved in 30 days.
yeah, correct.
Sorry, there was a request that I was asked to clarify that tonight, so I just wanted to make sure I did that.
Okay, I think we'd have time for one additional meeting after that, or maybe two, whatever we need, Shalice.
If we expect the fee structure to be resolved by next week, I think that's all that we're tasked with at this time. So I think next meeting would be all we need.
Oh, okay. Very good. So we have a motion to meet next week.
A motion to meet next week at this time.
Very good. Second,
I'll second it.
all in favor?
All in favor?
Okay,
Aye.
very good. Entertain a motion to adjourn at this point.
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I will see everyone same time next week.
Sounds good.
Andrew,
Thanks.
say hello to Gary for me.
Yes, sir. I will.